both have played through an incredibly tough competition. And for Wolfe, this team, this Perish Song team that actually has more modes, it's not just a Perish Song one trick, has taken down so many top trainers throughout this competition. Joseph Ugarte, Paul Chua, Justin Tang, Marcus Dion, Marco Silva, who is in that grand finals, have all fallen to this team. Time to see if he can do it yet again going up against Chuppa.
And it's not going to be easy. Of course, Chuppa, a fantastic player in his own right, but this team that Wolfe has assembled, it fits him so well and has so many different modes that can be run, while also just being very cohesive. I don't think there's a 4 Pokemon on this list that you could pick that wouldn't work very well together in some way. And so it's really cool to see Wolfe pilot this team that not only kind of has his signature, Shadow Tag Perish Song spin to it, but some Pokemon we just haven't gotten to see too often in this metagame.
Yeah, Politoed being able to be that Perish Song user. Previously, when we've seen Perish Song from Wolfe way back, it was that Screen Tail.
Yep.
But even though you have that Perish Song mode, strong threats like our Archaludon, the amount of damage that this Kingdra, also not really seen, can do is something that you cannot disrespect whatsoever. Over on Chuppa's end of the board, this is a team that we've gotten to see as an adaptation to where the meta has gone from just Sacramento just so recently. And it's a team, too, that's really been able to make waves through the competition. Multiple top players have been on it, though from my understanding, I do think a team very similar to this, if not the exact same, was beaten by Wolfe earlier on, so Chuppa definitely has a tall task ahead of him.
Yeah, speaking of Sacramento, Marcus Dion is running this same team, like you just said, Sierra, and that is who Wolfe defeated in top 8. So if history prevails, then it looks like Wolfe might know a little bit of, how this matchup might play out. But of course, different players will use the same team in different ways, and I'm sure that Chuppa has conferred with Marcus a little bit, maybe gotten some matchup notes and tried to get some ideas for how to take down Wolfe and the Politoed.
I mean, even after yesterday, Wolfe making waves through the field, you'd know that people went home and did their homework on how to beat it. I know multiple people were like, okay, I got to look at this team. It's whether they were able to, once they finally went up against this Perish Song Titan, be able to take him down. Big threats on this team. I'm looking at stuff like this Indeedee, this Blood Moon Ursaluna. Blood Moon Ursaluna has been a Pokemon, even in past regulation, has been so strong and powerful Hyper Voices, Blood Moons. When we've seen this match earlier, we talked about the importance of being able to get that damage output because you can't let Wolfe kind of be the only one to dictate the pace and run you out of options and then Perish Song you to the end of the game.
Tyranitar might be an important piece of the puzzle for Chuppa in this match as well. If Wolfe does opt to go for that Politoed Kingdra mode, then Tyranitar is a nice way to shut off the rain, remove both the power boost on the water type attacks and the speed boost from Kingdra's Swift Swim. Of course, you do have to be worried about Gothitelle. You can't be pivoting around when Shadow Tag is active. We're not going to see Tyranitar just yet. We get the Indeedee Sneasler lead from Chuppa, paired with Gothitelle and Kingdra.
What's also really nice about this Indeedee, in comparison to other matches that we've seen, is Wolfe and this fake out from this Gothitelle was able to put in a lot of work and be able to slow down the enemy team. Thanks to that Psychic Terrain, that priority is gone.
You can't fake out, and Trick is on the table for Indeedee as well. That could be really nice for Chuppa in this case to maybe limit some of the options that Wolfe has in terms of protecting, making sure that you're able to stall out some turns, either to get rid of Weather or Perish Song.
When you're looking at it, protect over and over to just kind of stall things out, something you got to be mindful of. And Chuppa is going to press on the go button right away, be kicking off this match. That is going to be the Sneasler into that Terra Dark.
Terra Dark will power up the Throat Chop and also not allow the Gothitelle to damage the Sneasler at all. Its only attacking move will be that Psychic.
And that's going to be so nice here, but it is just a Terrassalization that is just called out on this first turn and a double protect from Wolfe. So now you know that Chuppa no longer has access to this Terrassalization down the line. You know that you can't target into it with these types of moves like that Psychic. So it's a little bit of information going forward with.
I really like this play from Chuppa as well. The Terra Dark means that Gothitelle can't break the Focus Sash on the Sneasler. And of course, you do still have the option to go for that huge Expanding Force and get some damage out. It's not even Focus Sash, it's the Psychic Seed. Regardless, Gothitelle cannot damage it at all, and thanks to the Unburden, you're going to be moving faster than Kingdra even if the Politoed swaps in and activates the Swift Swim. Indeedee with this Choice Scarf as well might even be able to do some damage before the Kingdra can get a move off.
Yeah, so that's why something like this Trick Room, kind of eyeing it up, could make sense. You do have some speedier pieces on the team if you are looking at maybe a Kingdra down the line with bringing that Politoed in. You don't want to then set the Trick Room and, well, your own Pokemon is going to be the last one to go. But other slower options on the team, and the fact that the Indeedee has that Choice Scarf you called out, and that Unburden could be big. Incineroar swapping in, a good way to try and limit some of what Sneasler can do, getting that attack drop, and limit it does. That is going to be hit into the Incineroar. Expanding Force won't do anything at all. It's only going to be the Gothitelle taking the damage, and there's not very much at that.
Trick Room will set up, which reverses the speed order, and because Shadow Tag is active, these two Pokemon are locked on the field, a really rough spot for this Indeedee to be in. Obviously cannot damage the Incineroar thanks to that Dark typing, and Gothitelle took very little from that Expanding Force. Again, Gothitelle can't damage this Sneasler, which is a bit of a reprieve for Chuppa there, but this Incineroar already taking the attack down to one stage because of the Intimidate, and now threatening something like a knockoff to even get a little bit of damage off, but notably, no Flare Blitz, actually. So the Sneasler still not going to take too much damage this turn.
Yeah, and that's the thing is, sure, you're trying to limit what this Sneasler can do, and Chuppa's trying to limit what Wolfe can do, and since he doesn't quite have that coverage, what you're kind of doing to it in return isn't that much. So looking at kind of options, you can try and limit just a little bit more and try and keep dwindling that attack away since Chuppa is stuck on the field. But this is where Wolfe is going to be bringing out the Terastallization of his own, not Incineroar, his trusty duo into the Ghost type.
This Ghost means that now Expanding Force actually will be doing a decent chunk of damage to this Incineroar, but by going for this Ghost Terra, you imagine that the knockoff might be going into that Indeedee for a clean one-hit KO.
Indeedee is gone and out of there. So any Expanding Forces down the line are null, and once the Psychic Train is gone, it is gone for good. Of course, you get the clean one-hit KO, the follow-up Psychic, just in case it was barely holding on, isn't going to do anything. And look at that Terastallization. Talking about making sure the Sneasler's options are limited, the fighting type will have nothing to do to that Incineroar.
Yeah, I really love that play from Wolfe for that exact reason. Indeedee is the only thing that can threaten the Ghost type Incineroar on this turn, unless Chuppa goes for some huge throat chop read into that slot. But by going for the Terastallization and also knocking out the Indeedee at the same time, you imagine the Psychic was certainly aimed at that slot just in case it wasn't KO'd. You guarantee that Incineroar still doesn't take too much damage. You're matching the Terastallization from Chuppa now, so you've both used that resource. That is available to you only once per game, and now Wolfe is still in control here. But Tyranitar comes in, another Dark type for Gothitelle to do precisely 0 damage to. And again, this Incineroar only has knockoffs, so Tyranitar is not going to take too much damage for a few turns at least.
Getting the first KO is nice. If you can get 2, though, for Wolfe, you can put all of a sudden Chuppa into that checkmate situation. That's the danger of the Perish Song. It's where that damage could come in, because options in the back are definitely ones that can be backing a little bit more of a punch here. Is Politoed, the Drizzle Pokemon, the Perish Song setter, is coming on out. Incineroar Protect. The reason we don't see something like a Flare Blitz on this team or any other coverage move as knockoff, targeting into that is going to do absolutely nothing. I'll have to see if the Politoed is going to be taking a little bit of damage onto that swap in, but no, it was the double up. So free switch here into Politoed.
A really nice turn for Wolfe once again. The Shadow Tag lock now is broken, so Wolfe has the option to switch out one of these two Pokemon, but because he has lost a Pokemon already, Chuppa can't swap both out, and depending on which one you pick, like you're going to have either this -1 Sneasler in the field still, or this Tyranitar possibly in range, so there's not really a great option here if you're Chuppa anymore. Again, your offense still pretty strong. You have the +1 special defense on your Sneasler, which will allow it to survive this turn most likely, and Tyranitar, even with the rain up, I think should be able to survive one Weather Ball thanks to that Assault Vest. So you do have the option to start getting some damage out here. Like a knockoff into that Incineroar slot would be pretty devastating, but you have to like trade so many resources to get it off.
Knockoff, you're talking about that Assault Vest. It is something that Tyranitar doesn't have access to anymore. The follow-up with the Weather Ball is going to be doing a lot more damage. Tyranitar cannot stand up to that pressure. And Chuppa down to his final 2 Pokemon in this game 1.
And just like you called out, Sierra, now we have the chance for a Perish Song checkmate, except paralysis coming through here, so it might get a little bit weird. As long as the Politoed can get 1 Perish Song off of this game should be over.
Where there's a will, there's a way. And we have definitely seen some crazy Sneasler games, and that is going to be the Trick Room away from the field. So this is an opportunity to bring in something faster and try and pressure into the Politoed. The only one that can do this Perish Song, and there's not really a good way to keep it safe.
There's not a good way to keep it safe anymore, but Trick Room still being up means that Politoed will be acting first thanks to that lowered speed from the paralysis. And so it's going to be interesting to see whether or not this Politoed can act. Because, I mean, as long as Perish Song goes off, Wolfe wins. Like that's pretty clear at this point. But if Politoed gets paralyzed, it could get tricky.
We'll have to see. It all comes down to this Politoed, the little frog that could. If it can break through in this one situation, Wolfe is going to be one step closer into these finals. And that's the dangerous thing. It's out of your hands at that point. It is going to break through, though, and that is going to be the Perish Song. Chuppa with only 2 Pokemon. They're going to faint in 3 turns. And with everything on Wolfe's team, having access to this Protect, and him just having 4 Pokemon to swap around, there is going to be no way for Chuppa to be able to break through this.
Especially with that parting shot, you're lowering the damage output on Chuppa's side of the field even more. You can swap in this Kingdra. You really don't need its offense anymore, and I think if you need to swap something into a possible attack, that's probably the right one, because Gothitelle, you can stall out some more turns with Fake Out. You can even, maybe set up Trick Room again if you really need to, but again, like at this point, something has to go very, very wrong in order for Wolfe to lose this game, and I don't even know if it's like mathematically possible anymore. I think Chuppa agrees.
You can just lose a Pokemon per turn and you're still going to win this game.
Exactly.
Like, you can sit there and do absolutely nothing. And this Politoed, thanks to this Perish Hound, will be able to get it done. And we'll have to think then, too, this is an opportunity to kind of think about what Chuppa can do in that game, too, as that is going to be the Trick Room done now. Last time when I spoke, it was the funky psychic terrain. But it is an interesting question on what can be done, because, again, there is that offense ways for Wolfe to be able to kind of break through. We got to see this Politoed doing quite a lot of work. And it looked at a team that couldn't be quite as broken as easily on Chuppa's end. So really is just back to that drawing board. And there's, Chuppa's wishing that was a turn ago.
I know. A turn later, and that could have been way back for Chuppa into this game. The speed interaction between the Politoed and the Tyranitar, I think, is interesting. A lot of times, trainers will have their Politoads outspeeding Tyranitars most of the time, because it is naturally a little bit faster than Tyranitar. But in Trick Room, the Politoed acted first. So maybe Chuppa trained his Tyranitar a little bit in speed. Maybe Wolfe made his Politoed, as slow as possible. But that combination of the speed interactions meant that the knockoff, getting rid of Assault Vest, removing the special defense boost, meant that Weather Ball was able to knock it out. And that was a deciding factor, provided that the paralysis didn't prevent the Perish Song from going up.
Yeah, it was almost there, There is almost a possibility. But we'll get to see this brought out just a little bit more. And yeah, just an opportunity to think about for the drawing board. With the Pokemon, what are you thinking kind of in this next one? I mean, Wolfe doesn't have to win off Perish at this point. You just take the KOs.
It looked like Chuppa in the beginning of this game was very heavily targeting the Pokemon that wasn't Gothitelle on the field. And the Trick Room going up is, I think, essentially what was the difference maker in this game, at least in the early half of the game for Wolfe. So maybe for Chuppa, you find a way to not let Trick Room go up so early. And even if it does go up, you find a way to take a KO or 2 in the process, because once Trick Room went up and Wolfe had 4 Pokemon to Chuppa's 3, it became very difficult to win this game.
It's understandable, too, why he was going for anything that wasn't Gothitelle. If you were thinking that the Trick Room maybe wasn't too much of an issue, if you thought you had that longevity, considering the Tyranitar and this Terra Dark Sneasler, just completely wall the Gothitelle. You get rid of everything else, and you just win the game off of that. So that definitely makes sense. But yeah, the Trick Room and just the speed tiering of these Pokemon, and even Tyranitar, even if it looked like on paper it could be a good answer into some of these things, I don't even think really got to help out too much, considering that was the Pokemon the most acceptable once that Trick Room was set. So that is going to be the official word. Towel thrown in, and can officially announce Wolfe winner of game number 1.
I do think it's possible Chuppa didn't know the speed interaction between the Tyranitar and the Politoed going into this game, and maybe if he did, he would have prioritized keeping Trick Room off the field a little bit harder. Maybe he thought, Tyranitar couldn't act before Politoed and Trick Room, and I can, if Trick Room goes up, at least get some damage off with this thing before it has to take a possible Weather Ball. But of course, now knowing that, you can maybe think, okay, Tyranitar, not so great in Trick Room, but it is good in this matchup otherwise. I can try and find a way to prevent that Trick Room entirely.
Yeah, and looking at options on this team, there definitely is ways to try and slow that down. First off, you got super effective things. But even if you're looking at the move item, this Gothitelle, it's the Citrus Berry, so that's something that just can't be just straight up taunted and just stop it in its tracks right there. No Trick Room available, and that's also a really cool way, if you think that your Annihilate's not just going to get bodied in this matchup, to also turn off these endless protects that Wolfe's team has.
Yeah, Taunt Annihilate actually could come in handy here. We did see it hit the field later on in this game, but if you do want to lead that Annihilate, you have the threat of Taunt right off the bat, and you also have a Ghost type on the field that will not be subject to Shadow Tag. So it could be a bit of flexibility there for Chuppa. I think the thing you have to worry about if you're leading that Annihilate is it's not the Focus Sash that we see sometimes times it's holding the safety goggles instead. So if we do see that Kingdra Gothitelle lead from Wolfe once again, that could be in a scenario where Wolfe just swaps the Gothitelle to Politoed, powers up that Kingdra, and just knocks out that Annihilate in one hit. So you do have to be a little bit careful with it, but at least the threat of the taunt and the flexibility of being able to switch in front of the Gothitelle could be helpful.
100%. And now down 1 in this series, Chuppa has to find that answer on where he's going to be able to make this adjustment. And I wonder where it's going to be, because it definitely looked like, with how things played out, it's not a run back and maybe a different move, because it looked like a really, really strong position for Wolfe right away in that match. So heading on into game number 2 here, we are going to see that swap of Annihilate in the lead next to Sneasler, but the Kingdra and Gothitelle. So a lot of pressures from both ends of that field. That Kingdra especially is so dangerous.
Kingdra very dangerous, but thankfully Chuppa does have the Annihilate on the field, which means he can swap out possibly into that Indeedee, which would activate the Psychic Seed, give Sneasler the special defense boost, and allow it to outspeed a Kingdra in the rain. With a combination of those things, plus maybe something like an attack from that Sneasler, you could maybe threaten damage right off the bat, but it's still really tricky, right? You have the taunt that's available. If Annihilate can stay on the field and not get knocked out by this Kingdra.
Yeah, at least this is the situation too, where if you want to be going for the Trick Room, you are forced to, well, keep the board how it is right in this very moment, which is going to not necessarily give quite enough a boost, and it would be then relying on a Draco Meteor Connect, which we all know how that works. Terastallization right away in the match, though, into the Sneasler. We've gotten to see in previous matches how much that Psychic can do to this Pokemon, so right away going to be dropping that Dire Claw into the Kingdra as well. Any status, that will be the paralysis. Not only are you going to be slower, there's an opportunity you cannot act on this turn, and Annihilate sticking around. That's the taunt into the Gothitelle. Trick Room off the table. And Kingdra doesn't even break through. What a turn for Chuppa.
And the Trick Room was selected by Wolfe, so absolutely zero progress made on this turn. What an amazing turnaround from Chuppa after what was a rough turn 1 in that first game, but now he is in such a strong position. This Gothitelle can only Psychic, and obviously because the Sneasler is a Dark type, it will be entirely ineffective. This Kingdra being paralyzed means that one hit from the Annihilate or the Sneasler will be able to knock it out, and Annihilate is still at full HP, so the threat of Final Gambit doing a huge chunk of damage to either the Kingdra or the Gothitelle in one fell swoop is still very much active.
Yeah, you've done what you needed to do. You've made sure this Trick Room is offline, and if you can get a KO, I don't think you need to stick around for much longer. You've done all you need to. Gothitelle is going to be switching out on this turn, so an opportunity when you come back in for that taunt to be erased, and Incineroar come on in to mitigate what this Sneasler can do at least. Whereas for Annihilate instead, that's just going to be boosting the damage from Defiant.
Defiant damage is boosted. Dire Claw here comes through, and Kingdra survives thanks to that Intimidate. Rage Fist will not do too much to Incineroar despite this Defiant boost because it has not been stacked up yet at all.
Kingdra will break through the paralysis this time, not being followed on the last turn, and the double connect. Sneasler accuracy is going to fall. The double accuracy. So Annihilate, if it does connect a move, it is going to do a lot of damage. It's just the if you're going to connect. Kingdra, that's going to be the self-KO from that Life Orb recoil at the end, but a free opportunity for Gothitelle to come back in, and this gets a little weird now.
It does, especially with those 2 accuracy drops. I think Sneasler can pretty reasonably swap itself out now. You don't need this Unburden boost for the rest of the game because of that speed. But of course, you can't because the Gothitelle is right there. It does have access to Fake Out as well. Wolfe has 2 Fake Outs live, but because one of them is a Ghost type, you're almost definitely not going to be using both of them. And now you have to deal with this Annihilate as well. It's going to be a +3 attack, but -1 accuracy. So if it does try to go for something like a close combat or a Rage Fist, might have to be pretty careful.
And with Gothitelle having swapped out at the field and now back in, if it wants to, it can try and go for the Trick Room this go around. Sneasler flinch, stopped in its tracks. It's going to be the Rage Fist, but it's going to be the Rage Miss as Gothitelle avoids the attack. Firing off his Psychic now into that Annihilate. Not enough for the KO, though.
Barely not enough. That is a huge miss from the Annihilate there. Even though it's only been stocked up once at that point, the +3 attack Rage Fist probably would have been enough to knock out that Gothitelle. But because Annihilate survived, it's now at a 150 base power Rage Fist, which will be able to KO Gothitelle at +3, unless it opts to Terastallize into a Dark type. But at the same time, Chuppa still remains with 4 Pokemon on the field. And against a team like Wolfe's, with the option for the Perish Song, that is a huge bit of momentum that he can keep.
and iron this up. I mean, you do have this option to try and take down with this Incineroar to make sure that this Gothitelle does stay safe, considering this could be such a key piece in this match. So protect. Now the close combat into Incineroar. We've seen the damage be mitigated, but that super effective hit is still going to break through, and Incineroar goes down.
Big KO there for Chuppa. Now there are only 2 Pokemon left on Wolfe's side of the field, so Perish Song is pretty much off the table for the rest of the game. Because the Gothitelle protected as well, no Trick Room goes up, and Chuppa will maintain this speed advantage. Politoed is coming in, but you still have to worry about this +3 Annihilate with those 2 Rage Fist stacks, and I don't think either of these Pokemon can take a Rage Fist.
And we're not going to see a Politoed singing along this game, that is for sure. With Wolfe being the one down to 2 Pokemon, you have to try and make it through the rest of Chuppa's team with full force. The 2 Pokemon on the field have taken so much damage, but they're so fast and they're so powerful. Of course, both of them with these accuracy drops.
Of course, yeah, this accuracy drops could come back into play. We already saw the one Rage Fist miss, but close combat did connect. Thankfully for Chuppa, though, even if these 2 Pokemon start missing some of their attacks, he will have whatever is left in the back if he needs them, but I don't even know if that's going to be necessary.
Yeah, and that might be information that you get to keep all for yourself going into a Game 3. If he can just take the game right here, right now, as Gothitelle in the closing moments of this match, Terra Dark. Dire Claw that will connect into the Politoed, not too much damage.
No!
Taunt. We're in the business of missing today. This Annihilate doesn't want to connect anything. Now Politoed, Weather Ball into the Sneasler, already such low health, is going to finally claim Wolfe his first KO in the match. And without this Gothitelle being hit, being able to avoid the wrath of this Annihilate once again, will be able to go for this Psychic. And we saw the health bars on Chuppa's Pokemon. He's going to have to reveal the final 2.
It will be down to 2v2. I really do like the selection of Taunt from Chuppa on that turn. We knew that Wolfe had Terrestrialization on the table, and this Gothitelle could turn from a Ghost Weak Pokemon to a Ghost Resistant Pokemon, and going for Taunt there means that Trick Room doesn't go up. You don't have the option to protect, to stall out what could possibly be a Perish Song coming, but unfortunately the Taunt missing means that Gothitelle still has all its tools available to it. Tyranitar will be one of Chuppa's 2 final Pokemon, and it's joined by the Indeedee.
All right, Indeedee, definitely something that could put a lot of pressure on to this Politoed, but now when you're eyeing up on the Indeedee on the other end, that is going to be a task for the Tyranitar. And this situation too, I mean, if you're eyeing up, we're at 2 apiece, so this is where we can maybe see that Perish Song come back into play.
Yes, because if Perish Song does happen, that means that at the end of those 3 turns, the player who loses both their Pokemon first, and essentially it comes down to speed, will be the one that loses. And we've seen the Politoed and the Gothitelle be slower than Chuppa's Tyranitar, and of course slower than this Choice Scarf Indeedee. So if Wolfe does have the chance to go for a Perish Song and can somehow find a way to stall out those remaining 3 turns, he can win this game, but I do think Chuppa might have the offense to break through.
Yeah, considering we are looking at a Psychic Surge, Indeedee, Expanding Force, this is some big damage. With the Choice Scarf instead, though, it's not going to be quite as powerful as some of the other Indeedees out there. So we're going to have to see how much into this. Trick instead, though, is going to be making sure that this is locked in.
I really like that trick. It means that even if Politoed does have the ability to get the Perish Song off on this turn, it will not be able to protect to stall it out. Perish Song with that Choice Scarf will be acting first now, and the countdown has begun. This game will take no more than 3 more turns.
Yeah, we might be headed into a Game 3 or just ending this off, as the Politoed is going to be brought down finally to a 1/3 of its health. And this is where you can get that confirmation with these speed tiers, watching this Sandstorm and where this damage is being done. And at this point, yeah, this Politoed's going fast.
It's going fast, and it's just going to keep singing. Whether or not that song is effective doesn't really matter much. So now if you're Chuppa, you know that you just need to KO this Gothitelle and you will win the game. You do have the option to go for that Terra Blast from the Indeedee because you did use Trick. Another nice benefit is that you are not locked into any certain moves, and you don't have to keep using Expanding Force, for example, into this Dark-type Gothitelle. Tyranitar does have the option to go for a Low Kick, which could be super effective, but also a Rock Slide could be some decent damage and prevent a possible Trick Room, which could also win the game for Wolfe.
Yeah, that's going to be the weird thing with the speed dimensions, because Gothitelle currently the slowest. If that is gone, well, then this Politoed is no longer. The attempt at the double protect will fail. So Chuppa will have the opportunity to hit into this Pokemon on this turn. The question is how much damage will be done. Indeedee forced to be going for this Terra Blast, which isn't necessarily the most. And Tyranitar Low Kick, super effective, but not effective enough.
It looks like Wolfe is going to need a double protect to try and win this game. There's not enough turns of sand to knock it out before this Perish Song activates. And because he went for the protect and failed it this turn, it means that this coming turn, protect is guaranteed to work, and then the Perish count will fall to 1. And then if you get a double protect afterwards, we are seeing again, Gothitelle is the slowest thing on the field because it's taking the sand damage last. So if Wolfe does get a double protect here, that will be the end of this set. All Chuppa needs is for that 2 and 3 chance to go his way and get those Terra Blast and low kick off back into that Gothitelle.
And Chuppa's odds have been all over the place for this match because you did get paralysis, you did manage to get the 1 and 3 earlier onto the Kingdra, but then you missed double moves into this Gothitelle. So how lucky do you feel right about now?
I mean, you gotta hope, right? It's the only way you can win this, because Wolfe, I'm sure, knows that is his win condition. The only way you can win is with this Perish Song, and you need to make sure that your Gothitelle sticks around, because Politoed will faint first.
All right, and knowing that there's the protect on this turn, the hit in just expanding force, get rid of the Politoed, so we don't even have to think about that Pokemon later on. Just the 2v1. But again, what it's gonna come down to, does he get the double protect?
That is actually a really smart expanding force as well. That kind of eliminates the chance that Wolfe has to set up a Trick Room and make Politoed the slowest thing on the field again. So you can possibly eliminate some kind of way Wolfe can weasel his way back into a win here. But now this is it. The game will come down to this Gothitelle. Will it be able to get a double protect and stick around long enough for Perish Song to take the final 2 KOs? Or will Chuppa break through and force a game 3?
Your fate is entirely out of your hands at this point. You click the button and you start praying to the Pokegods that you're going to finally hit it. And we've gotten to see throughout, the last double protect did fail, but we have seen so many times on broadcast that 1 and 3 come on through. Again, this is for Wolfe Glick to make it onto the finals. Another opportunity to try and take another title. For Chuppa, put us into a game 3, see if he can break through. Gothitelle goes for the protect. It's not gonna get it though, fails. And now both of these Pokemon can fire into the Gothitelle. 7 HP, but it will be the follow-up. Tyranitar, low kick. We're going to a game 3.
What an exciting game. Chuppa made such a great adjustment with that Sneasler and Annihilate lead. They put in so much work, despite those accuracy drops, despite the Annihilate getting a Rage Fist and a Taunt thrown wide. That was a really, really well-played game by Chuppa, making sure that he kept the Pokemon count in his favor and didn't allow Wolfe to get that 2 Pokemon remaining checkmate until Wolfe had 2 Pokemon remaining of his own. And at that point, Wolfe didn't have enough, essentially just didn't have enough HP left in the tank to survive those attacks before Perish Song could do the job.
And looking back at this match too, I'm so intrigued with how a game 3 would go because there are so many different ways this could have gone. Obviously, that very first turn, being able to get the paralysis onto that Kingdra and not acting. Your Annihilate was okay to be shutting things down like this Gothitelle. So it couldn't be going and putting yourself in a Trick Room. That was not so beneficial. But then there was the 2 misses that Wolfe definitely benefited from. Yeah. And then heading into this end game. And definitely have to applaud Chuppa as well for the trick instead, because this Politoed, if it was able to start firing off attacks too, we could have maybe found a situation where Chuppa wasn't able to have enough in the tank to try to close out this match. Yeah. But it's stuck. It's just stuck singing. And singing the demise of Gothitelle next to it as well.
Just for clarity's sake, in a scenario like we had at the end of that second game, when everything on the field is subject to Perish Song and there's nothing else in the back left to switch out, if the Perish Song does complete, if it reaches the full 3 turns, the knockouts are essentially happen in speed order. So in that case, since Chuppa had the fastest Pokemon left on the field, his 2 Pokemon would have been knocked out first, and then Gothitelle still gets knocked out, but because Chuppa has 0 Pokemon before Wolfe does, Chuppa loses that game and Wolfe would have won it. So that's why it was so important for Chuppa to get that knockout on the Gothitelle and make sure that Perish Song didn't get to give Wolfe that win.
And Politoed, normally slow, had the Choice Scarf at that point because of the trick. So you could kind of keep it around for just like a minute, because that one's fine. But now it's time for game 3 of the set here in top 4. And we're going to see a run back of last game. Annihilate Sneasler for Chuppa, Kingdra, Gothitelle for Wolfe. Last time, Sneasler, Dire Clawed Kingdra, and paralyzed it. Can you count on that again?
I don't know if you can count on it again, but I don't know that you necessarily need it right off the bat. The paralysis mattered a little bit less than the full paralysis that immediately followed. You know, no damage came out from that Kingdra, but if you're able to get an attack off with the Annihilate on this turn, that might be just what you need. I do really like this lead again from Chuppa. I think that it's just the most flexible option that he has. The Sneasler is able to, you know, immediately go for that Terra Dark, make sure that Gothitelle cannot damage it, and you have the Annihilate there to threaten either Final Gambit or Taunt, both of which would be rough.
It's a threat, but that's about it as Annihilate leaves the field and Indeedee coming on out. So if you do see a fake out instead from the Gothitelle, it's going to be stopped in its tracks with the Psychic Surge as well, making sure the Annihilate stays nice and safe. This is as well, you know, this Sneasler, that's going to be the special defense raise here. Now we're going to get Terastallization of the match. Let's see where it gets to go. This is going to be such a pivotal turn number 1, and it's yet again going to be that Sneasler, making sure at no point you're going to get caught off guard with a Psychic from that Gothitelle.
I think that's just really safe from Chuppa. It allows him to kind of ignore the Gothitelle with the Sneasler if he needs to, and make sure that it won't be caught off guard by a Psychic, because if one Psychic move comes that way, again, it's not the Focus Sash, it is the Psychic Seed set, and even though you have the special defense boost, that surely will not save you, especially setting up a Psychic terrain.
All right, looking at this is just a protect, but you get the Terastallization out from Chuppa, and now you've gotten to swap into Indeedees on the field, and these two are going to be the ones that are stuck. So Wolf, a lot of information now going into this.
Yeah, it's nice though, because that double protect, it's really hard to punish. I do like that Chuppa swapped the Indeedee in there, because now you have an extra threat of damage coming out from a possible expanding force, but you have put yourself in a position where you no longer can switch your Pokemon out. This is exactly how Game 1 started, essentially, right? You had the Indeedee Sneasler out on the field against this Kingdra Gothitelle, and that was a game that Wolf won pretty cleanly. So you have to wonder if Chuppa has some kind of alternate plan than what we saw in Game 1 to try and spin this board state in a more favorable way.
That's the question, because if you were thinking that your Annihilate is just too pressured and it's such a key piece, it could be the swap out, or you're just a man with a plan at this point. Kingdra swapping out, Intimidate back in, Incineroar can try and pressure with some moves later on, but again, no fake out options. But that's going to be the close combat for the swap in. Incineroar already brought down to a dangerously low amount of health. If it is a follow-up with something that was like, hey, maybe a Terra Blast could have been dangerous, but instead, that is going to be the trick. And now, it's got a choice scarf.
Very fast cat.
Yeah, maybe a few different Pokemon could have been story, but I think it's going to be Incineroar that takes this item to the grave, and Gothitelle, that's going to be a free Trick Room on this turn.
That is a really nice trick, especially with Trick Room going up. The Incineroar no longer having access, you know, to the safety goggles isn't a huge deal. It means it will take some Sand Chip damage if Tyranitar does come in, but more importantly, Indeedee ditches that Choice Scarf. And based on how they're trained, I think it's still possible that Incineroar acts before Indeedee in the Trick Room. You know, despite Incineroar having the Choice Scarf, which makes it faster, aka slower, in Trick Room, I think an Incineroar on a team like Wolf's is probably trained to be pretty slow, and that gap may be too big to, you know, overcome with a Choice Scarf. So if you're Chuppa, you really want your Indeedee to act first and possibly knock out Incineroar with a Terra Blast. But that close combat also a huge read there too.
The Psychic will be the first on the turn, Gothitelle the slowest, and the Indeedee's gonna not really mind the hit too much, as Parting Shot from Incineroar is gonna just get it out of there. So no matter what's hitting into that slot, it's not gonna be an Incineroar that's fainted this go around. An opportunity, you could either bring the Kingdra back in, which might not appreciate a hit, or the Politoed now that you are in this Trick Room situation, which is what we're gonna see.
Importantly, that Incineroar acting, again, before this Indeedee in Trick Room means that Parting Shot does come off, but Politoed might have to eat some big damage here. Expanding Forest coming through from Indeedee, boosted by that terrain, does just under half to the Politoed, and Dire Claw comes through as well.
Any status, not going to be lucky that go around. Politoed, it is quite injured, but you are going to be in your ideal situation now with the Trick Room. And of course, there is just the option to go for, well, another Protect.
Yeah. The nice part about this Sneasler being the Terra Dark, being the Psychic Seed, means that even though it has been intimidated twice, or intimidated once and then Parting Shotted, and it's at -2 attack, it's really not going to be taking too much damage from anything on Wolf's side of the field, especially this Gothitelle, of course. It only has that one Psychic move, but Incineroar, again, only running Knockoff as a damaging move, and Politoed, on a team as bulky as this one, probably not trained super strong in special attack either.
And the Gothitelle, we saw how little it was doing last time around. Also not necessarily the most trained. Only a little bit of damage into this Indeedee, though it is stacking up as another expanding force is coming on out. We can even talk about how little this Indeedee is just kind of doing in general, because, I mean, we get to see normally a lot of choice spec ones, but it's not doing a lot. But the poison, that is something that can start chipping away at this Gothitelle just a little bit more. And when you're looking at a Pokemon, you kind of want to stick around. And Wolfe, who wants these Pokemon to stick around, he needs to for the Perish mode of this team. That hurts just a little bit.
I even think poison might be like the best possible case for Chuppa there against a team like this one, where a lot of the times if you're using Dire Claw for a status activation, you might want the sleep or the paralysis for the chance at the Pokemon not acting anymore. But on Gothitelle acting doesn't really matter as long as it's out on the field, and the poison limits its time it has left on the field, especially now that its Citrus Berry has been consumed. There is no more recovery for this Gothitelle, and as soon as Gothitelle goes down, Shadow Tag is gone. You can switch out of any possible, Perish Song locks there because Shadow Tag has been deactivated, and so I really like that Dire Claw play. Even though you have the same type attack, Terra boosted Throat Chop there on the Sneasler, it's not going to be doing too much damage thanks to that Intimidate and Parting Shot, so really smart Dire Claw selection that paid off.
Yeah, and like, if you can just get Chuppa down to the final 2, then you don't even need that Shadow Tag. But so far, the damage output necessarily hasn't been in Wolfe's favor, with Kingdra being the one that could do the most and being hidden in the back, and also not necessarily wanting to come out of this situation since the dimensions are twisted. Intimidate Sneasler is going to be limited just a little bit more as a 3rd round of Psychic into the Indeedee. One more will probably pick that up. Now gets to do an Expanding Force back. Incineroar, though, of course, not going to mind that. Immune.
Immune to the Expanding Force, but Sneasler will attack here. Dire Claw comes through and knocks out Incineroar, so Chuppa finally takes the first KO of Game 3 here in top 4. And this is looking like a really strong position for Chuppa. Wolfe doesn't really have the resources left to go for a Perish Song endgame. The Psychic Train is ending, and Trick Room, I believe, only has 1 more turn left. After that, Gothitelle is going to be very weak. Probably not able to set up another Trick Room, and of course, once Gothitelle goes down as well, that's just Wolfe down to 2 Pokemon. So if Chuppa has Tyranitar in the back, he can remove the rain for the rest of the game and get rid of Kingdra's Speed Boost and Power Boost.
This is where we need to see the offensive capabilities of the team come out now as Kingdra, of course, out onto the field. Of course, it is going to be a Pokemon that is a little speedy, in which case, since we are still in Trick Room, the slowest thing, but we need to start seeing Pokemon on Chuppa's end whittled away, because the Gothitelle only has a couple of turns left, maybe just 1 if Chuppa targets into it right now, and then it would just be this Kingdra and Politoed to try and close out this match for Wolfe.
Because the Sneasler does have the Unburden boost, it will be acting after Kingdra in Trick Room anyway, so it makes sense that Chuppa would opt to protect it on this turn. But this Indeedee, if it survives a Psychic, we'll get the chance to fire off 1 more attack, and it barely is knocked out, so a swing of good fortune there for Wolfe, but is it too late?
That's going to be the question. Reminder, this Annihilate swapped out on the very first turn and has been saved in the back. And we're getting to the position now where Chuppa, with that Sneasler, even it has taken a lot of damage, still a threat. Annihilate coming on in will, of course, be a threat. And, of course, Chuppa still has a 4th Pokemon that has not been revealed in this match. The last couple of different games, it has been that Tyranitar.
I think it needs to be that Tyranitar again, especially if Wolfe is able to let the rain run out and then reset it up for this Kingdra. The Tyranitar will be able to, set up the sand with that Sandstream ability and power down this Kingdra. But fortunately, again, for Chuppa, this Sneasler does have the Unburden boost. Its speed has been doubled, which means it will still be acting before this Kingdra in the rain. And Gothitelle being so low, 1 more attack will be able to knock it out unless you swap it out. But if you swap it out, Politoed isn't very healthy either and will have to take an attack too.
And then you'd be losing the way to try and win out on any weather or any chance of being able to reset that. And Terastallization saved right until this end. Eyeing up that Kingdra. If you're talking about that damage, that stellar Terastallization, it will have to be miles, or Canada, it'll have to do kilometers worth of work here to try and make this happen.
I think it is still possible, though. Kingdra is very strong, and we keep seeing the Sneasler stat summaries flashed on the screen by Wolfe there. It is at -3 attack, so it will have a hard time doing meaningful damage, especially to this Kingdra that sits at full HP.
You still have the possibility of crits. You still have the possibility of those Dire Claws. Politoed coming onto the field means that Gothitelle won't go down as this one, as this is where we're going to see that stellar Terastallization from the Kingdra now. And a lot of damage into, I mean, if you can just get rid of this Annihilate, like, you're such a nice spot.
It is. It's going to be really important. I think this Annihilate will pretty easily be knocked out by this Weather Ball. Dire Claw comes through, though. Will we get any kind of status activation? No. Weather Ball happens, and we'll target this Annihilate.
And that is going to be the Stellar Boost. That is going to be past Spawn. And the Annihilate is going to be taken down. So now 2 Pokemon for Chuppa in this match. The Kingdra being able to do just enough on that final turn of Rain.
And importantly, because Wolfe did swap the Gothitelle out, he will have the option to swap the Politoed back into Gothitelle on this coming turn, and then Gothitelle will be knocked out by, if nothing else, the poison damage, and of course the sand that is also being set up by Chuppa on this turn. But then, after Gothitelle is knocked out, Politoed can come back in and reset up the Rain. So Kingdra will have its lovely Rain for the rest of this match, which could be a huge deal for Wolfe because this Tyranitar does not have a way to Terastallize off this water weakness anymore.
And this Sneasler has not been allowed to swap out of the match at any single point. And the only time the Gothitel's left the field is when Chuppa's already down final 2. So again, you're going to be playing for the dire causes, and you're going to be playing for those critical hits. Is Kingdra safe on this turn? Dire Claw targeting into that, of course. Seeing the Gothitelle, how little health it has, and the fact that, hey, even the Tyranitar targeted into it, it would have been KO'd from that poison anyways, but it's going to go down regardless. And now, of course, Wolfe gets the weather of his choice.
This is going to have to come down to Dire Claw for Chuppa. You know, even if this Kingdra doesn't get knocked out by Dire Claw, especially because, again, it's at -3 attack, if a sleep happens or a paralysis into a full paralysis happens, and this Kingdra isn't able to get a Weather Ball off into this Tyranitar, that is the way that Chuppa can win here. Just the paralysis, I don't think will be enough because Tyranitar will still be outsped. You need that no attack coming out from Kingdra this turn.
The sleep would secure it. The paralysis gives you a chance, and poison, no good. And Sneasler, that has been the pinnacle Pokemon of this regulation. So much based around it and so much discourse about this move. And now the only saving grace for Chuppa in the closing moments of this match here in top 4. And this Kingdra, if it can act on this turn, it can do so much. Dire Claw comes out. This is going to be the moment. No status comes on through. Weather Ball now into the Tyranitar. One-hit KO. And only one Pokemon remains in Wolfe's way to secure him in our finals.
No status at all means that even though this Weather Ball might not KO Sneasler here, the Kingdra will easily be able to finish it off on the following turn. And Politoed itself can just Weather Ball once again. So it looks like Wolfe has secured his spot in finals here in Toronto after a really back and forth set. Maybe one of the best sets of this tournament so far, Sierra.
And one of the closest ones that we've seen. Wolfe has been taking down VGC Demons throughout this tournament with ease and taking all the way to 3 games. Wolfe Glick will be in our grand finals and one step closer to a historic 10 regional championship title.